if everyone had if the slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be a vegetarian. Sir Paul McCartney stated this off of quotegarden.com, and I believe that it's a true statement because of all of the treatment that animals do go through in order to be killed and eaten for our consumption. All of us have had some sort of exposure to the way that chicken and beef that we eat for dinner that gets on our plate somehow, that our parents cook for us in barbecue, but gets on the plate. But you know, we really still eat it. And some of us love it because it would be really hard to give up, and some of us are also iffy and doubtful to also give it up because they don't really know what else they would eat for like protein, you know, and other sorts of things like that. But a lot of us do have some sort of knowledge and have probably seen some sort of video in order to like actually get the knowledge that we have today. And I really began to think about how eating animals like became a source of energy for us, and didn't really make too much sense. A possible answer that I thought about was because like people have been doing it for so long, and maybe it's just like been accustomed like after time and such. But our parents also did raise us with eating meats for the most part, so it just kind of makes sense to eat meat, and no one ever really questioned it. Today that I'm going to cover that being a vegetarian can have really like large health benefits, such as being less prone to diseases, you can have a longer life, and the effects that eating meat can have on the environment around us. Let's move into the category of diseases and why vegetarians seem to have a little less of them. Having a vegetarian lifestyle can have a better rate at which disease is less prone to you. According to cancer.gov, heterocyclic amines such that are called HCAs and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are PAHs, are chemicals that are formed when the muscle meats, including beef, pork, fish, or poultry, is cooked using high temperatures, such as using a frying pan or a grill, or directly over an open flame, so barbecuing it also. And with these substances, it kind of makes you more prone to getting heart disease, such as cancer, like different kinds of cancers, like colon, liver cancers, and then you can also get diabetes from it, just from the different types of things. And then also found on the exact same website from cancer.gov, the PAHs that are found in the charred foods, they can also be found in like traces of cigarettes and also from like car exhaust fumes. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure you just don't really want to eat car exhaust kind of stuff. So, just wouldn't really make too much sense to feed our bodies with that and like give us energy. All these chemicals that can be related to like different diseases also, but it's not really traced too far yet, so we don't really have too much information on it. Not only ones that I stated, but coronary heart disease is the #1 source of death in America and like the largest chronic disease that we currently have. So, and that comes from a lot of cholesterol, which can be found in traces of different meats, such as poultry and bacon and stuff like that. And then smoking cigarettes, which is like related to barbecuing and stuff, since there's different traces in it. And then high blood pressure, which is from having a lot of different fats and stuff. And many different like cuts of beef will have a lot of fat in it. That's why they have like the lean beef and like ground beef and such like that, so they take out some of the fat. And then I found another website, which is the National Heart and Blood Institute in the United States, and it says that a lot of the meats in our diets can be linked to the different types of diseases that we actually do have. So it just kind of all comes into one. Now that I've stated some of the facts on how meats can harm the health in our body and how disease can be avoided, let's talk about something that ties into living longer. I think living's pretty important in my opinion, and I kind of want to live for like as long as I possibly can. So it just kind of made sense, and I found it on blissreturn.com that carosine, it's the #1 amino acid that we get, and it's found in the brain and heart, and it actually helps us live longer. It is the antioxidant that protects cells from having radical damage, and radical damage is pretty much where like your brain actually can function at full capacity, and your heart is actually beating like as it should be beating, so it's not really like beating slow and such like that, because like heart disease and stuff comes from not having enough carosine in your diet, and carosine can be found in a lot of the fruits that we actually eat. This amino acid gives a large boost to the immune system, so it helps fight a lot of infections, especially older people. It really does benefit them. So having a lot of fruits and vegetables and stuff that has a lot of carosine inside can actually be beneficial for older people. And with this, there was a source on the exact same website that found out the amino acid does come from a lot of different fruits that we eat, just common fruits like bananas, tangerines, apples, stuff like that. So it's pretty easy to get it in. It's just a lot of people do kind of neglect food when they do eat a lot of meat. I know I do when I ate meat. But also, I found on lifeextension.com that carosine can prove it's rejuvenating cells. So it can actually wake some of the cells that are back up that can actually like be gone from some of the stuff. And it protects a lot of the skin from using wrinkles, and it has a lot of elasticity. Carnosine is the most promising broad spectrum shield against protein degradation. But aside from this, having a diet in which meat is not the main source of protein can also be beneficial, because a lot of different halogens and stuff can also come from that. So that could also like just kind of wear the body down after time, and it wouldn't really be beneficial to your body later on in life when you're having a lot of meat, because it just does seem to be more prone to actual things later on. Now that you know that carnosine is a huge factor for like the lifespan in humans, I'm going to move on to the impacts of eating meat and on the environment that we have around us. In the environment that we have, a lot of pollution and a lot of contaminants are released into the atmosphere, not just from eating meat and stuff like that, but just from the lifestyle that we live. And our economic footprint is also like honestly pretty large, because we are Americans and we do drive cars and stuff like that, because things are really spread out. But you know, eating meat could also just like also lower our environmental footprint just a little bit. And by lowering it, it'd be said that like the earth would actually like last longer. So it does seem to make sense to like not use all the things that we do every single day. And I found on PETA.org that in order to produce one flesh of cow, you have to do 16 pounds of vegetation in order to get it. So that's 16 pounds that we could be using towards other people's food and stuff like that, instead of just having 1 pound of meat. And raising animals in the food for more than half the water in the US is taken up because of that. It takes about 2,500 gallons to produce a pound of meat, but only 25 gallons to produce a pound of wheat. So if you take that into consideration, it just doesn't really add up too much. So it just, if people did have more of a plant-based diet, it would save a lot of water. It would save a lot of different, you know, food, energy, and then it would save a lot of different land space too, because we're not taking up as much room for the cattle to grow and to like mature and stuff like that. So I think I drink about 1 gallon a day, to be honest, and I think the cattle would have to drink a lot more. So it just kind of makes sense to like give that more to the people rather than having to give it to just like one specific thing. And I'm not saying that the cattle should be like inferior to humans, because I do feel that like animals should be equal to humans and stuff like that. But it's like there has to be some sort of limit on it. So I don't think that like all animals should be captured, you know, and taken in and then raised and kind of just killed off to be eaten. Just doesn't really make sense. And then I know this is gonna sound super vegan and vegetarian, but actually animals do have feelings. So, you know, yeah. And then to sum it all up, I just wanted to go over that I covered the being less prone to disease, having a longer life expectancy, and then the effect that eating meat can have on our environment. And and then I just wanted to go over that, you know, next time you see meat, you know, at the grocery store, just kind of think about where it came from. And you know, if there was a glass house, I'm pretty sure that you would notice how the meat's actually treated. Thank you.
All right, Kaylin.
I think you had a nice preview. I knew what you were going into. You cited all your sources. You did a good job at explaining the complex words or chemicals that not all of us would understand. It made me rethink eating meat, and I think the one thing I would say is you read your cards a lot, and when you did look up, you looked up into the same spot. So I guess just practice more, just scan the room a little bit, but yeah, otherwise I think you did fine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought the preview was clearer than what the purpose statement was. I did finally, I mean, I don't think it's a surprise where you're ultimately headed, but I do think you want to state it a little bit more clearly at the beginning. But the preview was fine. I do think you get sometimes caught up in the minutia of that biological stuff, and I'm going to disagree a little bit with Kaylin. I don't know that it got explained all that well. I think you could probably paraphrase and summarize some of those concepts a little more effectively, and not have to get into some of the technical descriptions that you're talking about, and just make your point a little bit more clearly. But I do think that you want to be I do think you want to be citing your information on those particular points more consistently. I was not quite clear why there has to be a trade-off between the one amino acid that you're talking about that is so beneficial, kerosene, and consuming meat. Your presupposition is that people are substituting fruits and vegetables with meat, and I don't know that that's the case. You said that that was the case with you, but I'm not exactly sure I ought to be generalizing based on your experience. You might be atypical. In fact, you probably are already atypical because of the position that you have here, so you want to be a little bit careful about using that as your justification there. The language in transition sometimes needs to be a little bit careful. I wrote it down, and stuff like that gets used as a transition phrase a few times. It's like when you get to the end of an idea, you don't really have a completion for the idea. That's the catchphrase that you end up relying on, and you want to be careful about that. It's a little bit lazy, I think. The argument about environmental impact and you called it the economic footprint at one point. I think you're really talking about the environmental footprint in the long run. I think that needs to be developed a little bit more. I do think you probably want to refrain from using PETA as a site, but their information is probably obtainable someplace else. I think there are going to be people out there who are going to be naturally suspicious of PETA as an organization and institution. Didn't we have that speech in here? Yeah, so it's one of those things where you go, who's going to believe PETA, a bunch of animal killers, that kind of thing. Yeah, wasn't that the speech?
That was mine.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so and then on presentation things, you need to work on a couple of things. You talk to us sometimes. But sometimes you are just reading stuff that you've got in front of you, and you're not, like that quote that you have at the beginning, that's a good quote. I like it as an attention device, but you just step all over it with your delivery. You're missing the point there. It just kind of dumps out of your mouth, and you're not getting the emotional connection to it. And so I think, like I said, I think it's a good quote. I think it works pretty effectively. Although I've always wondered, on the other hand, does that mean that all butchers are vegetarians? And all the people who work in those meat plants, because they are on the inside and they see all that stuff. Is that how they feel? That kind of thing. It's an interesting contrast. So that was the thought that I got, but you have that nice emotional point, and you just kind of walk through it like you were not paying attention to what it all means. It's just a step that you have to go through, and I think you need to be a little bit more engaged there. All right, thank you.